Welcome to today's episode. Before moving forward, if you're new to this channel, and if you genuinely like what I do here, you can consider subscribing and liking the video. I create long, calm science stories like this, meant to be listened to slowly, especially at night. Tonight, we're following something very ordinary. So ordinary that most of the time, we forget it's even there. Oxygen, not as a chemical symbol, not as a formula, and not as a number on a chart, just oxygen moving quietly through a human life. Right now, wherever you are listening from, oxygen is already present. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with urgency. It simply exists in the air around you, mixed gently with other gases, waiting without intention. The story of oxygen in the human body doesn't begin inside the body at all. It begins far earlier, in the space between breaths, in the invisible volume of air that surrounds everything. Air feels empty to us, but it isn't. It is structured, layered, and alive with motion. Every room, every open window, every quiet night sky holds countless oxygen molecules drifting slowly, colliding softly, changing direction without purpose. Some of those molecules have been here for a very long time, longer than any human life. Some have passed through forests, oceans, and lungs before. Others have never entered a body at all. There is no way to tell them apart. When a breath begins, nothing dramatic happens. No signal is sent. No command is issued. The body simply creates a small difference in pressure, gentle enough that air moves in response. Oxygen doesn't rush forward. It follows. The air enters through the nose or mouth, carrying oxygen along with it, not as a guest of honor, but as part of a crowd. Nitrogen is there too. So are trace gases, unnoticed and unchanged. The body does not immediately separate oxygen from the rest. There is no sorting yet, no recognition. The air travels downward, passing through spaces shaped by cartilage and soft tissue, shaped slowly over years of growth. These passageways are familiar. They have done this before. They will do it again. Inside, the surfaces are warm and slightly moist. Not uncomfortable, not dramatic, just prepared. Oxygen moves along without awareness, carried by the gentle flow of air, turning where the passages turn, slowing where the space widens. There is no hurry. This journey has never required speed. By the time the air reaches deeper inside the chest, it has already changed slightly. It has been warmed. It has been softened. It has been shaped to fit the body it is entering. Still, oxygen remains unchanged. It has not yet been used. It has not yet been claimed. Ahead lies a branching system, dividing again and again, becoming finer with each turn. Large airways give way to smaller ones, and smaller ones still, until the air reaches spaces so tiny that they feel less like tunnels and more like rooms. These spaces are quiet. They expand gently, then rest. They do this thousands of times a day, without fatigue, without complaint. Here, oxygen finally begins to slow down, not because it is told to, but because there is nowhere else to go. The journey that follows is not about movement anymore. It is about exchange, but that part of the story comes later. For now, oxygen waits, suspended in air, resting inside a living body for the first time in its long, drifting existence. It does not know where it is. It does not know what it will become, and the body does not rush it. This is how the journey always begins. By the time oxygen reaches these deeper spaces, the movement of air has become almost unnoticeable. Not stopped, just softened. The large passages that carried air inward are now behind it. Here, the spaces are smaller, quieter, and closer to the body's inner world. These tiny air-filled pockets line the lungs in vast numbers. There are so many of them that it's hard to imagine them individually. Together, they create an enormous surface, folded gently inside the chest, waiting without urgency. Oxygen drifts into these spaces and lingers. This is not a place of force. Nothing is pulled, nothing is pushed. The body relies on something far simpler: closeness. The air inside these spaces rests just beside blood flowing through equally tiny vessels. They are separated by walls so thin they almost feel symbolic. A quiet boundary, a shared edge. On one side, oxygen floats freely, still part of the air. On the other, blood moves steadily, already carrying the history of the body with it. This blood has been here before. It has traveled this path countless times, passing through the same vessels, returning again and again. It is familiar with this place. Oxygen is not. And yet, the meeting does not require introduction. Across this delicate boundary, oxygen begins to move, not because it is directed, but because it can. Where there is more oxygen on one side and less on the other, motion happens naturally. No decision is made. No instruction is needed. One by one, oxygen molecules slip across the thin divide, leaving the air behind and entering the bloodstream. This moment is quiet. There is no sensation attached to it, no awareness. If it were not happening continuously, it might feel important. But because it happens all the time, it goes unnoticed. Inside the blood, oxygen immediately encounters something prepared for it. Red blood cells drift past in enormous numbers, each one shaped in a way that makes space for oxygen. They are not searching. They are simply available. Within them is hemoglobin, a structure designed long before any single human life began. It has been refined slowly across generations to do one thing well: hold oxygen gently, not permanently, not possessively, just enough to carry it. When oxygen binds to hemoglobin, nothing changes in how it feels. There is no warmth, no pressure, only a subtle shift in position. Now, oxygen is no longer part of the air. It has become part of circulation. The blood continues moving, guided by the steady rhythm of the heart, which does not rush and does not stop. It has its own pace, learned early, kept carefully. With each beat, oxygen is carried farther from the lungs, deeper into the body. The lungs do not cling to it. They release it immediately. Their role is not to keep oxygen, but to pass it on. As blood flows away, new air arrives behind it, and the exchange continues, endlessly repeating, layer after layer, breath after breath. This process does not demand attention. It works best when ignored. Most of the time, we notice breathing only when it feels different, when it becomes shallow, when it becomes fast, when it becomes difficult. But under normal conditions, it fades into the background, just as oxygen does. Now carried within the blood, oxygen begins a new phase of its journey. It is moving faster than before, but still without urgency, still without purpose of its own. The body knows where to send it, and slowly, steadily, the journey continues inward. Once oxygen has entered the bloodstream, it becomes part of a much larger flow. The blood does not ask where it should go. It already knows. It moves in wide, looping paths, guided by vessels that branch and rejoin, stretch and narrow, forming a network that reaches every part of the body. This network was shaped gradually, not planned all at once, refined through years of growth and quiet adjustment. Oxygen travels inside this system without sensation. It does not feel the movement. It does not register distance. What was once drifting freely in air is now carried with consistency, passing through larger vessels and then into smaller ones, slowing again as the pathways narrow. The heart continues its steady work, contracting and relaxing in a rhythm that does not require attention. It began long before conscious memory, and it will continue without being noticed. With each cycle, blood is sent outward, delivering oxygen to places that differ greatly from one another. Some of that oxygen is headed toward muscles that have worked during the day and are now resting. Some toward organs that never truly stop working. Some toward the brain, where activity changes subtly as night approaches. Each destination has different needs, but oxygen is not informed of this. It is not assigned a task. It is simply made available. As blood reaches smaller and smaller vessels, the movement slows again. The speed that once carried oxygen swiftly away from the lungs gives way to a gentler flow. These tiny vessels pass so close to living cells that separation almost disappears. Only thin walls remain between what is carried and what is needed. Inside these quiet spaces, oxygen waits once more. On one side, oxygen remains bound to hemoglobin, held lightly. On the other side, cells continue their steady internal activity, using energy, releasing byproducts, maintaining balance. The difference in oxygen levels between blood and tissue creates a familiar pattern. Where there is more, movement happens. Oxygen detaches from hemoglobin without resistance. It crosses into the surrounding tissue, entering cells that have been expecting it. Again, no instruction is given. No signal is required. This exchange is so subtle that it escapes awareness entirely. If oxygen could notice anything, it might sense a change in environment. The air-filled openness of the lungs is long gone. The flowing river of blood has narrowed into stillness. Inside a cell, space feels different. It is crowded, structured, and busy in a quiet way. Molecules move carefully, guided by interactions that repeat reliably. Here, oxygen finally begins to participate. It enters structures within the cell that specialize in energy production. These structures have waited patiently, prepared to use oxygen when it arrives, and just as prepared to continue when it does not. Oxygen does not dominate this process. It supports it. Energy is released gradually, not in bursts, allowing the cell to maintain its functions without disruption. Muscles use that energy to stay relaxed. Organs use it to continue their background work. The brain uses it to sustain patterns of activity that soften and shift as wakefulness fades. None of this feels dramatic from the inside. Cells are not aware of being supported. They simply continue. As oxygen is used, it changes. It becomes something else, no longer able to support energy in the same way. Its role here is complete, but the journey is not over. The body is careful not to keep what it has finished using. Just as oxygen was brought in quietly, its altered form will be carried away without attention. Blood, having delivered what was needed, begins its return. The flow reverses direction, moving back toward the lungs, carrying with it the byproducts of cellular life. Oxygen's contribution is now part of the past. The system does not pause to reflect on it. It moves forward calmly, continuously, making space for the next arrival. And somewhere in the air outside, new oxygen is already waiting. As oxygen completes its work inside cells, the body does not linger on the moment. There is no sense of completion. No marker that something important has just happened. Life inside the body moves forward by releasing what it no longer needs. The oxygen that once arrived as part of the air has now changed form. It has combined with other elements, becoming something heavier, something ready to leave. This transformed molecule joins the returning flow of blood, moving away from tissues that are finished with it. The journey back is slower, calmer. The blood now carries less oxygen and more of what the body is prepared to release. It travels through veins that gently guide it inward, back toward the chest. The heart receives this returning blood without judgment. It does not compare it to what it sent out moments ago. It simply accepts it and continues its rhythm. From here, the blood is sent once more toward the lungs, not to deliver oxygen this time, but to let go of what remains. The lungs, which earlier served as an entry point, now become a place of exit. The same thin boundaries that allowed oxygen to enter now allow these altered molecules to leave. Inside the lungs, blood flows past air-filled spaces again, close enough for exchange, but never touching directly. On one side, the blood carries what the body no longer needs. On the other, the air waits, unchanged, ready to receive it. The movement happens naturally. Where there is more of something on one side and less on the other, motion follows. The transformed oxygen drifts out of the blood and back into the air, joining the mix of gases once again. It does not carry memory of where it has been. It does not leave a trace behind. The lungs do not resist this release. They are built for it. With the next gentle outward movement of air, this molecule leaves the body entirely, returning to the space it came from. Outside, it becomes part of the environment again. It may rise slightly, carried by warmth. It may drift sideways, guided by a small current. It may remain close, lingering near the place it was released. There is no guarantee of where it will go next. Some molecules will be taken up by plants. Some will dissolve into water. Some will travel long distances before entering another living body. And some will never be part of a body again. Inside the human body, the process continues without interruption. New oxygen arrives. Old oxygen leaves. The exchange repeats quietly, thousands of times each day, shaping life without demanding attention. Most of the time, we notice none of it. Breathing fades into the background. The movement of blood remains unseen. Cells continue their work without announcing themselves. And yet, this simple exchange supports every thought, every movement, every moment of awareness. As night deepens and the body grows still, oxygen continues its steady cycle, unaffected by sleep or wakefulness. It does not slow because attention drifts. It does not stop when eyes close. It simply continues. The journey of oxygen is not a single path, but a loop, repeating endlessly, connecting the inside of the body with the world beyond it. And in that repetition, life remains quietly sustained. As the body begins to settle, the journey of oxygen changes in subtle ways. Nothing stops. Nothing begins. The same pathways remain open, the same exchanges continue, but the rhythm shifts slightly, adjusting to a quieter state. When the body rests, muscles release tension they no longer need to hold. Movement becomes minimal. Energy demands soften. Oxygen responds without being told. Less is used in some places. More remains available than before. The balance shifts gently, without effort. Blood still flows everywhere, but the pace feels different. Not slower in a measurable way, but calmer in how it is distributed. The heart maintains its steady rhythm, but each cycle feels less urgent. It has learned to adapt to different states. Without conscious input, oxygen continues to arrive at cells that remain active, especially those responsible for maintaining internal balance. The liver continues its quiet processing. The kidneys continue their filtering. The brain continues its subtle reorganization. Even during rest, nothing inside the body is truly inactive. But the way oxygen is used changes. In the brain, oxygen supports patterns of activity that become less focused on the outside world and more oriented inward. Signals shift, connections rearrange. This is not something that can be felt directly. From the inside, it simply feels like attention loosening its grip. Oxygen does not create these changes. It enables them. Without oxygen, none of this gentle transition would be possible. As the body rests, breathing often becomes shallower, more regular. Air moves in and out with minimal variation, following a pattern learned over time. Oxygen enters the lungs at this calmer pace and is passed into the blood just as reliably as before. The body does not need to think about it. This reliability is part of what allows rest to happen. When systems function predictably, attention is free to drift. The journey of oxygen becomes background activity, supporting processes that work best when unnoticed. In muscles, oxygen supports repair rather than movement. Small changes take place, restoring fibers used during the day. In the immune system, oxygen supports quiet monitoring, allowing responses to remain measured rather than reactive. In the brain, oxygen supports the slow replay and adjustment of experiences, helping memories settle without effort. None of these processes require urgency. They unfold gradually, supported by a steady supply of energy. Oxygen is not consumed faster because the day was long. It is not conserved because the body is resting. It is used as needed, moment by moment. This flexibility is part of what makes life resilient. The journey of oxygen does not depend on conscious control. It adapts automatically, adjusting to changing demands without drawing attention. As rest deepens, oxygen continues to arrive, continue to support, continue to leave. It is present for every quiet adjustment the body makes. And when attention finally fades, when the sense of effort dissolves, oxygen remains, not as a focus, not as a sensation, just as a quiet companion moving through familiar paths, keeping the inner world steady while the outer world falls away. The journey of oxygen is not measured the way we usually measure time. There are no minutes attached to it, no clear beginning and end. Inside the body, time feels different. Oxygen moves according to need, not according to clocks. It arrives when space opens. It leaves when its role is complete. This creates a kind of internal time that runs quietly beneath awareness. Cells do not count how long oxygen has been present. They respond only to whether it is available. When oxygen arrives steadily, processes unfold smoothly. When it becomes limited, those processes adjust without reflection. This ability to adapt is old. Long before humans existed, long before complex organs formed, living systems learned how to manage oxygen carefully. They learned not to rely on abundance. They learned to survive change. That history still lives inside the body. Even now, every cell carries instructions shaped by environments that were unpredictable and often harsh. Oxygen was never guaranteed. Because of that, the body does not waste it. Oxygen is delivered precisely where it is needed, in amounts that match the moment. Some cells receive more, some less. Some wait longer, some release it quickly. There is no sense of inequality here, only balance. As the night progresses, the body enters a rhythm that feels slower from the outside. Inside, however, timing remains exact. Oxygen continues to arrive in pulses, synchronized with the movement of blood. Each pulse carries possibility. Inside cells, oxygen participates in reactions that release energy gradually, allowing systems to maintain stability rather than surge. This slow release matters. Fast energy creates heat, tension, and noise. Slow energy creates continuity. The body favors continuity during rest. Oxygen supports this preference without drawing attention to itself. It allows reactions to proceed at a pace that matches the quiet state of the body, neither rushing nor stalling. In this way, oxygen becomes part of the body's sense of time. Not time as something noticed, but time as something lived, while attention drifts, while thoughts soften. While awareness loosens its grip, oxygen continues to mark time internally through steady exchange. Each cycle of delivery and release is a moment passing, even if it is never noticed. This is why the body can rest without falling apart. Processes that require time are given time. Repairs happen gradually. Adjustments happen quietly. Transitions happen without force. Oxygen does not speed these processes up. It simply allows them to continue. When the body shifts between stages of rest, oxygen remains constant in its role. It supports the brain as patterns of activity change. It supports muscles as tension dissolves further. It supports organs as they continue their quiet maintenance. The passage of time inside the body is smooth because oxygen makes it smooth. There are no sudden gaps, no sharp interruptions, just a continuous flow, linking one moment to the next. And when morning eventually arrives, oxygen will not need to relearn anything. It will continue exactly as it always has, because inside the body, the journey of oxygen does not belong to day or night. It belongs only to life moving forward, one quiet moment at a time. Among all the places oxygen travels, the brain remains one of the most quietly demanding. Even at rest, even when the body lies still, the brain continues its activity, changing shape in subtle ways rather than stopping. Oxygen supports this without preference. A steady portion of the blood's oxygen supply is always directed upward, toward the brain, carried through vessels that protect and guide it carefully. This has been true throughout the day. It remains true at night. What changes is not the need for oxygen, but how the brain uses it. As external attention fades, the brain begins to reorganize itself. Activity shifts away from constant monitoring of the environment and toward internal processes that do not require effort. Oxygen enables these shifts without directing them. Inside the brain, networks of cells alter their patterns of communication. Some pathways become quieter, others become more active. This redistribution does not feel like thinking. It feels more like settling. Oxygen continues to arrive at every region, allowing this rebalancing to occur smoothly. Without it, transitions would be abrupt. With it, they are gradual. Memory-related areas use oxygen to gently revisit experiences from the day, not replaying them exactly, but adjusting how they are stored. Emotional centers use oxygen to recalibrate responses, softening reactions that no longer need intensity. Sensory regions reduce their demand slightly, reflecting the reduced input from the outside world. Throughout all of this, oxygen remains available. It does not spike when activity increases. It does not disappear when activity quiets. Its presence allows the brain to change state without disruption. The brain does not switch off. It moves, and oxygen moves with it. Even in the quietest moments of the night, electrical signals continue to pass between cells, supported by the energy oxygen helps release. These signals are not directed outward. They do not create awareness. They support maintenance. Connections are strengthened or weakened. Patterns are adjusted. None of this requires conscious involvement. Oxygen's role is not to create thought, but to sustain the conditions in which change can happen gently. This is why the brain remains vulnerable to oxygen disruption. It relies on consistency. Even small changes in oxygen availability can alter how the brain functions, not dramatically at first, but subtly. Under normal conditions, however, consistency is maintained. Oxygen continues to arrive, cycle after cycle, supporting the brain as it moves through different phases of rest. And while the brain changes, the person remains unaware. There is no sensation of oxygen arriving, no signal of it being used. It remains invisible, just as the processes it supports remain unseen. By morning, the brain will feel different, even if no specific moment of change can be identified. That difference is not the result of one event, but of many quiet adjustments, all supported by the steady journey of oxygen. And as the night continues, oxygen keeps moving, unchanged in its role, steady in its presence, allowing the brain to rest without ever truly stopping. Beyond the brain, oxygen continues its work throughout the body, supporting a balance that is rarely noticed. This balance is not about perfection. It is about stability. Every system inside the body operates within a range rather than a fixed point. Oxygen helps keep those ranges intact, allowing small variations without disruption. As rest deepens, the body shifts into maintenance mode. Energy is directed toward processes that are easy to postpone during the day. Repair replaces performance. Adjustment replaces reaction. Oxygen supports these changes by remaining reliably available. In the muscles, oxygen helps sustain slow repair. Microscopic changes take place, reinforcing structures that were stressed earlier. Nothing happens all at once. This gradual pace prevents excess heat, excess tension, excess strain. In the digestive system, oxygen supports the continued breakdown and processing of nutrients, even when eating has long stopped. Movement slows, but does not cease. In the immune system, oxygen supports quiet observation. Cells remain alert without being aggressive, responding only if necessary. None of these systems compete for oxygen. Distribution remains balanced, guided by the body's long-learned priorities. This coordination does not require awareness. It relies on signaling pathways refined over time, shaped by environments where resources were not always abundant. Because of this history, the body is efficient. Oxygen is delivered where it will be used, not where it will accumulate. As a result, the internal environment remains steady. Temperature stays within a narrow range. Chemical levels remain balanced. Tissues remain supported. This stability allows rest to deepen further. When internal conditions remain predictable, the nervous system does not need to stay alert. Oxygen plays a quiet role in maintaining this predictability. It does not create calm directly. It enables the systems that create calm. The body does not relax because oxygen is present. It relaxes because oxygen allows processes to proceed without interruption. As the night progresses, oxygen continues to arrive and leave without ceremony. Each exchange reinforces balance. Each cycle supports continuity. Nothing dramatic marks these moments. They blend together, forming a steady background against which rest unfolds. This is how the body protects itself during vulnerability. By maintaining internal balance quietly, it allows attention to withdraw. Oxygen's journey becomes part of that protection, unseen and uninterrupted. It moves through the same paths it has always used, supporting systems that have learned to trust its presence. And in that trust, the body remains at ease, carried gently through the night by processes that do not require notice. The journey of oxygen does not end when it leaves the body. Once released into the air, it becomes part of a much larger cycle, one that extends far beyond any single life. The oxygen that supported a thought, a movement, or a moment of rest does not disappear. It simply changes context. Outside, it mixes again with the surrounding air, joining countless other molecules that share no memory of where they have been. Some of this oxygen may linger nearby, remaining close for a time. Some may drift upward, carried by subtle currents. Some may travel distances that feel vast compared to the space inside a body. There is no predictable path. Eventually, some of these molecules will encounter living systems again. Plants may absorb them during quiet exchanges at their surfaces. Water may hold them briefly. Soil may trap them temporarily. Through these interactions, oxygen continues its slow circulation through the living world. This broader journey gives context to the one that happens inside the human body. The body does not own oxygen, it borrows it. For a short time, oxygen becomes part of circulation, part of metabolism, part of balance. Then it is released. This borrowing and returning has been happening for as long as life has existed. Long before human bodies formed, oxygen moved through simpler organisms, supporting simpler processes. As life became more complex, oxygen's role expanded, but its behavior remained the same. It moved where it could. It supported what needed support. It left when it was finished. This continuity connects individual lives to a much larger system. Every breath links the body to forests, oceans, and distant environments that contribute to the air. Every release returns something back to that shared system. Inside the body, this connection is rarely noticed. The internal journey of oxygen feels self-contained, even though it never truly is. At night, when awareness turns inward, this connection becomes even quieter. The body rests within an environment that continues to circulate, exchange, and renew itself. Oxygen flows in and out, linking the stillness of the body to the movement of the world beyond it. This relationship does not require thought. It exists whether or not it is acknowledged. The body relies on it without reflecting on it. And because this exchange is steady and dependable, it allows rest to continue without concern. Oxygen's broader journey reminds us that the processes sustaining life are not isolated events. They are part of a slow, continuous circulation that moves through many forms, many places, and many moments. Each individual journey is brief. Together, they form something lasting. And as the night continues, oxygen remains part of this larger flow, supporting life quietly, both inside the body and far beyond it. One of the most remarkable things about oxygen is how completely it fades from awareness when everything is working well. The body notices absence far more easily than presence. As long as oxygen arrives steadily, it does not demand attention. It does not create sensation. It does not announce itself. It becomes part of the background, like a familiar sound that no longer registers. This invisibility is not a flaw. It is a sign of balance. Systems that require constant monitoring tend to interrupt rest. Oxygen does not. Its delivery is automatic, reliable, and quiet, allowing attention to remain elsewhere or to drift entirely. Inside the body, countless adjustments are taking place at this very moment, all supported by oxygen. Cells are maintaining internal conditions. Tissues are preserving structure. Signals are passing where needed. None of this feels like effort. Oxygen allows energy to be released gradually, preventing sudden changes that would demand awareness. Because of this, the body can remain in a state of rest without fear of interruption. Even when external awareness fades completely, oxygen continues to support internal activity. The body does not need to be watched. This is especially important at night. Rest depends on trust. The nervous system must trust that essential processes will continue without supervision. Oxygen helps make that trust possible. By arriving consistently, it reduces the need for vigilance. This allows awareness to loosen its grip on the body. Thoughts become less urgent. Sensations become less sharp. Attention becomes less focused. Oxygen does not cause these changes directly. It supports the conditions in which they can happen naturally. When people become aware of oxygen, it is often because something has changed. Breathing becomes uncomfortable. Air feels insufficient. Attention is pulled back to the body. These moments highlight how much oxygen is usually taken for granted. Under normal conditions, however, oxygen remains unnoticed. It moves through familiar paths, supporting systems that have learned to rely on it without monitoring. This quiet reliability is one of the reasons the body can rest deeply. Nothing inside needs to check whether oxygen is present. Its presence is assumed. As the night continues, oxygen keeps moving, sustaining balance without interruption. It does not speed up when thoughts slow. It does not slow down when awareness fades. It remains steady, and because of that steadiness, the body is free to let go, trusting that the journey of oxygen will continue quietly, carrying life forward without asking to be seen. When the journey of oxygen is viewed all at once, it can seem complex, airways branching into smaller spaces, blood moving through an intricate network, cells performing countless chemical exchanges. And yet, beneath all of this complexity, the principle remains simple. Oxygen moves from where there is more to where there is less. That quiet rule supports everything else. The body does not need to remember how to use oxygen. It does not need to relearn the process each day. The rules are built in, refined long ago, and trusted completely. This simplicity is what allows the body to function without conscious involvement. If oxygen required attention, rest would never fully arrive. Instead, oxygen follows familiar paths, repeating the same exchanges, cycle after cycle, without variation that would demand notice. This repetition is not wasteful. It is stabilizing. The same processes repeating reliably create a sense of continuity inside the body, even when awareness drifts. Cells rely on this continuity. They do not prepare for surprises. They expect oxygen to arrive. And because it usually does, they can focus on maintaining structure, balance, and function. This trust extends upward. Organs rely on cells. Systems rely on organs. The body relies on systems. At the foundation of that trust is oxygen, arriving quietly and consistently. During rest, this simplicity becomes especially important. The body does not want complexity at night. It wants predictability. Oxygen provides that predictability by behaving the same way it always has. It enters. It moves. It supports. It leaves. Nothing about this needs to be explained internally. There is no evaluation of success. The process simply continues. This is why the body can shift between states without disruption. Whether awake or resting, active or still, oxygen's journey remains familiar. It does not need to adapt its role. Only the body's use of it changes. As the night moves forward, this simplicity continues to support everything that unfolds quietly inside. Repair happens without instruction. Adjustment happens without effort. Balance is maintained without supervision. Oxygen does not make these things noticeable. It makes them possible. And because they remain possible, the body does not need to stay alert. Awareness can soften further, confident that the most essential support system is already in place. This is how life sustains itself through repetition rather than control. Not through effort, but through quiet reliability. And oxygen, following the same simple rule it always has, remains at the center of that reliability, unseen and unremarkable, yet absolutely essential. The journey of oxygen does not arrive at a final moment. There is no conclusion inside the body, no point at which the process feels complete. Instead, the journey continues by repeating itself. Oxygen enters. It moves. It supports. It leaves. And then it begins again. This repetition is not monotony. It is continuity. Each cycle supports the next, creating an unbroken thread that runs through every moment of life, whether noticed or not. The body does not store oxygen for reflection. It uses what it needs and releases the rest. This keeps the system light, responsive, and balanced. At night, when awareness withdraws and the body rests more deeply, this continuity becomes especially important. Nothing inside needs to decide what comes next. The processes that sustain life are already in motion, carried forward by familiar exchanges. Oxygen's journey remains steady as everything else grows quieter. It does not mark time. It does not announce change. It simply continues to move, supporting whatever state the body is in. This is why rest can feel safe. Even when attention fades completely, the most essential processes remain active, guided by principles that do not require thought. Oxygen follows the same paths it has always followed, linking the inside of the body with the world beyond it. Each breath connects the present moment to a larger circulation that includes air, plants, water, and countless other lives. The body participates in the circulation briefly, then releases it again. Nothing is held permanently, and yet life continues. By morning, the journey will still be underway, unchanged by the passing of the night. Oxygen will arrive, as it always does. It will move as it always has. It will support whatever the body asks of it. This quiet reliability is easy to overlook, but it is what allows everything else to happen. And as this story gently comes to rest, the journey of oxygen does not. It continues, unseen, supporting life quietly, moment by moment, breath after breath, long after attention has drifted away.